The night was cold, and the field stretched wide under the pale glow of the twin moons. The human farmer Ethan leaned on his shovel, wiping sweat from his brow. He had stayed late, repairing the irrigation lines, unaware that hungry eyes were watching him from the shadows. Among the tall stalks of grain, a small figure crouched low. Her ribs showed through her thin skin, and her hair, tangled in silver blue, fell over her frightened eyes. She was not from this world. Her glowing patterns flickered weakly on her arms, marks of a species that once thrived but now starved. Her stomach growled like a beast. She pressed her hands against it, whispering to herself, "Tonight, just one loaf, just one handful." She crept closer to the storage shed, where baskets of bread were kept. Her bare feet left no sound on the dirt. She reached out, trembling, and touched the warm loaf. But before she could pull it away, a voice cut through the silence. "Thought I heard something," Ethan said, his deep voice sharp but calm. He stepped into the moonlight, holding a lantern. His shadow stretched long across the ground. The girl froze, bread in hand, her glowing eyes widened in terror. She wanted to run, but her legs shook too much. "Please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm sorry, I'm so hungry." Ethan looked at her, really looked, and his grip on the shovel eased. She wasn't a raider, not a threat. She was thin, weak, and scared. He could see tears glistening on her face. "You steal from me, and you think, sorry. Will be enough?" he asked, his tone heavy. His words made her flinch as if struck. She dropped the bread back into the basket, falling to her knees in the dirt. "I'll pay," she said quickly, her voice trembling. "I'll work your fields. By day I'll warm you by night, just don't send me away. Please don't let me starve." Her words tumbled out in desperation. Ethan's breath caught. He hadn't expected that. Not from a thief, not from anyone. She was offering everything she had, even her dignity, just to survive another night, for a moment. The only sound was the soft hum of insects in the fields. The farmer stared at her, trying to decide. She could be lying. She could be dangerous. Yet something about her trembling form, about the way she pressed her forehead into the dirt, felt real. He sighed, lowering the shovel. "Get up," he said, his voice softer. "If you're serious about work, then tomorrow you'll start. But the warming part, we'll talk about that later." The girl lifted her head slowly, her eyes wide with disbelief. She expected anger, punishment, or death, but instead, she found a strange kind of mercy. "Eat," Ethan said, tossing the loaf of bread back to her. She caught it, clutching it as if it were life itself. Tears ran down her cheeks as she bit into it, the taste of hope filling her mouth for the first time in years. But even as she ate, Ethan glanced at the horizon. He knew nothing came without a price, and the shadows of the galaxy were always hungry for the weak, and tonight he had let one into his fields. The morning sun rose slow over the fields, its golden light spilling across rows of crops and broken soil. Ethan stood with his hands on his hips, watching as the thin alien girl stumbled through the rows. She had promised to work, and now he was testing. If her words were true, her body was weak, but her hands dug into the dirt with desperate energy. Sweat rolled down her pale skin, and the faint glowing lines on her arms shimmered weakly in the light. She pulled weeds, carried water, and dragged sacks heavier than her own body. Every step looked painful, but she did not stop. Ethan leaned on his shovel, his eyes sharp but not unkind. "You could run," he said, his voice steady. "No one's holding you here, why stay?" The girl paused, her chest rising and falling with hard breaths. Her silver blue hair clung to her face. She looked at him, her glowing eyes filled with both fear and determination. "Because if I run, I die," she said softly. "Out there, no one gives mercy. Here you gave me bread, that is enough." Ethan studied her words. They were raw. They carried the weight of truth. She was not only hungry for food, she was hungry for a chance to live. Hours passed. The sun climbed high, and still she worked. Her small hands turned red with blisters, but she did not complain. Ethan noticed the way she glanced at him, as if expecting him to shout or strike, but he never did. At noon, Ethan sat beneath the shade of a broken fence. He tossed her a flask of water. She caught it clumsily, lifting it to her lips. The water spilled down her chin, but she drank deeply. Her glowing arms pulsed faintly brighter. "You said something. Last night," Ethan said, his voice quieter now. "About warming me at night. Do you know what those words mean?" The girl froze. Her thin fingers tightened around the flask, her lips trembled before she answered. "Yes," she whispered, her cheeks darkening. "On my world, when someone has nothing left, they offer themselves. It is the last bargain of the desperate. I thought you would kill me or sell me, so I said it to survive." Ethan's jaw tightened. He looked at her with eyes that cut deeper than any blade. "And if I told you I don't want that from you?" Her eyes widened, shock plain across her face. She had expected cruelty, but instead she found refusal. Her shoulders shook as she lowered her gaze. Tears formed, but she wiped them quickly with the back of her hand. "Then I will only work until I fall. Just let me stay," she said, her voice breaking. For a long time, Ethan said nothing. The wind carried dust across the fields. The crops rustled like whispers. Finally, he spoke. "Stay, work, eat. That is enough." The girl covered her face with her hands. Her body trembled. She had begged, offered everything. And yet he had only asked for labor and honesty. The galaxy had never been this kind to her, but not all eyes looked kindly. That evening, as the sun bled red across the sky, some of the villagers came. They were rough men, hard from years of toil and loss. They had seen the alien girl in Ethan's fields. Their voices carried anger, suspicion, and fear. "Ethan," one of them called. "We saw her. She's trouble." "You don't know what she brings," another man spat on the ground. "First she steals, tomorrow she brings more of her kind. We don't want her here." The girl stood behind Ethan, her hands trembling as she clutched the edge of his coat. Her glowing eyes darted like a cornered animal. She knew this hatred well. It had followed her from world to world. Ethan stepped forward, his jaw set. His voice rose like iron. "She works my fields. She eats my bread. She is under my roof. That makes her mine to protect." The men grumbled, their eyes sharp with distrust. One of them sneered. "Don't say we didn't warn you, Ethan, when trouble comes, and it will. Don't expect us to fight beside you." The group turned and left, their footsteps heavy with judgment. Dust rose behind them. The girl lowered her head, her voice small. "They will hate you now, because of me." Ethan turned, meeting her eyes, his face stern, but his words carried a quiet strength. "Let them hate," he said. "I'll not let someone starve in my fields while I have food. I'll not live like that." The girl swallowed hard. Her glowing arms flickered stronger. For a brief moment, for the first time in years, she felt something she had forgotten. Not fear, not hunger, but safety. Yet the wind carried more than dust. In the distance, far beyond the horizon, ships moved, slavers searching. They had not forgotten the girl, with glowing arms, and soon they would find her trail. Ethan did not know it yet, but his simple choice to spare a starving thief had set him on a path that would drag both him and his farm into the center of a storm, and the galaxy was already watching. The night was quiet again, but inside Ethan's farmhouse, silence carried weight. The alien girl sat on the wooden floor near the fire, clutching the last piece of bread he had given her. Her glowing arms pulsed faintly in the dim light. Not bright, not strong, only like fading embers. Ethan leaned back in his chair, studying her. She had worked hard all day, harder than many men, yet she had not complained once. Her small body trembled with exhaustion. But there was more than hunger in her eyes. There was fear, old fear, the kind that never left. "You've carried chains before," Ethan said suddenly. His voice was calm, but his words cut deep. The girl froze. Her glowing eyes lifted to meet his. Her lips parted. But no sound came. She lowered her gaze quickly, hiding her face in her hands. "I see the marks," Ethan said. His tone was not cruel, only steady. "Your wrists, your back, they tell a story." For a long time she said nothing. The crackle of fire filled the room. The air grew heavier. At last her trembling voice broke the silence. "They took me when I was young," she whispered. "Men with collars and chains. They burned my village. They caught us like animals. My mother fought them. My father, too, but they were killed. I was spared, not because of mercy, but because I was small enough to sell." Her fingers curled tight around the bread, her voice shook with each word. "They sold me to the pits, where slaves fight for food. I was too weak to fight, so they beat me, they starved me, they told me my life was worth nothing. When I tried to run, they burned my arm. That's why the glow is broken, it never healed." She lifted her sleeve, showing a scar that ran across the glowing lines of her arm. The light flickered weaker there, dim and broken. Ethan's jaw tightened, his hands curled into fists at his side. "I escaped during a raid," she continued. Her voice grew softer. "They were distracted. I ran into the desert. I lived on scraps, on water stolen from rivers. I thought if I reached the human fields, maybe someone would kill me quick, or maybe someone would give me bread." Her words fell like stones into the fire's crackle. Ethan stared at her, his chest heavy. He had seen war. He had seen cruelty. But this girl carried wounds, deeper than any battlefield scar. "Why tell me this?" Ethan asked, his voice low, almost a growl. The girl looked up, her glowing eyes wet with tears. "Because you asked? No one ever asked before. Not once." Ethan leaned forward, his rough hands rested on his knees, his eyes locked on hers. "Listen, girl, whatever they told you, it was a lie. You are not nothing, you're alive, and that means something." Her lips trembled. She wanted to believe him, but the chains of memory were tight. That night, sleep did not come easy. She lay on a thin blanket near the fire, her body curled small. Ethan sat by the window, a lantern, in his hand watching the fields, his mind restless. He had taken her in, yes, but now her past had walked into his home, and pasts never stayed buried. The next morning she worked again, dragging water buckets, pulling weeds. The sun beat down. Her small body staggered, but she did not stop. Ethan worked beside her this time, silent but steady. When she stumbled, he offered his hand. She hesitated, then took it. The villagers watched from a distance, whispers passing between them. Some muttered about danger, others about shame. They saw the glowing alien girl in a human's field and spat on the ground. That evening, Ethan sharpened his tools. The girl sat nearby, tracing shapes in the dirt with her finger. Suddenly she asked, "Why do you care?" Her voice was small but sharp. "Why not send me away like the others?" Ethan looked at her, his face hard but honest. "Because I know what it is to lose everything," he said simply. "And because no one deserves to starve when food is near." Her chest tightened at his words. Something inside her shifted, a seed of trust pushing against the walls of fear. But far beyond the fields, shadows moved. In the dark sky, ships cut across the stars, silent hunters. The slavers had caught a trail. They followed whispers and scents. They wanted the girl with glowing arms back, and they never left debts unpaid. That night, as she lay by the fire, her dreams twisted. She cried out, her body shaking. Ethan rushed to her side, gripping her shoulders. Her glowing arms flared bright for a moment, then dimmed again. She gasped for breath, her eyes wide with terror. "They're coming," she whispered, her voice shaking. "They never stop hunting. They will find me, and when they do, they will burn everything, even you." Ethan's grip tightened on her shoulders, his jaw set firm. "Let them come," he said. "This is my land. They'll find it's not so easy to take what's mine." The firelight danced in his eyes, and for the first time in years, the girl felt something she thought she had lost forever. Hope. The next few days passed heavy with whispers. Ethan and the alien girl worked the fields from morning until the stars rose. Her hands bled from pulling weeds, her back bent from carrying water. Yet she never stopped. Every night she collapsed near the fire, her glowing arms flickering faintly, like broken lanterns. But the village was watching, and the village was not kind. Men gathered at the tavern, their voices low but sharp. They had seen the alien girl in Ethan's field, seen her carrying buckets, her glowing arms catching the light of the sun. To them, she was not a worker, not a child of hunger, she was a danger. She'll bring trouble, one spat. Aliens like her always do. Another leaned close, his voice dark. Mark my words, the slavers will come. They'll burn the fields to find her. And when they do, Ethan's farm will drag us all into the fire. The words spread fast like sparks in dry grass. By morning, the whole village knew. Mothers pulled their children closer when the girl walked past with Ethan. Men crossed their arms and muttered curses. The girl lowered her head, clutching the water bucket tighter. She felt the weight of every stare. That evening, Ethan brought her into the market. She needed clothes. She could not work in rags forever. He found her a worn tunic, boots with cracked leather, and a cloak to hide her glowing arms. The girl tried to thank him, but the stares cut her words short. An old woman hissed as they passed. "You shame us, Ethan, bringing her here." Ethan stopped, his broad frame towering over the narrow street, his voice carried like a hammer. "She eats what she earns. She works harder than any of you who sit and whisper." The woman's lips pressed tight. Fear flickered in her eyes. But still she muttered, "When death comes, don't say we didn't warn you." The girl tugged at Ethan's sleeve, whispering, "Please, don't fight them. It's my fault. I should have stayed hidden." Ethan looked at her, his jaw tight. "No," he said. "You've hidden long enough." That night the villagers gathered at his farm, torches in their hands. The flames lit the dark sky as they stood at his fence. Their leader, a thick-shouldered man named Garen, called out, "Ethan, you've gone too far. We won't let her stay. She's a thief, a curse. She'll bring ruin to us all." The girl stood behind Ethan, her body trembling. Her glowing arms flickered bright with fear. She pressed herself against the doorframe, wishing she could vanish. Ethan stepped forward, shovel in his hand. His face shadowed by firelight, his voice thundered, "She stays, she works my fields, she's under my roof, and anyone who tries to take her will find out how hard I bite." The crowd shifted. Some muttered angrily, others stepped back. Garen spat on the ground. "Then when the slavers come, you'll face them alone." The villagers turned, torches vanishing into the dark. The fields fell silent again, only the sound of crickets filling the night. The girl sank to the ground, her head in her hands, her voice cracked. "They hate you now because of me. You'll lose your place here, your friends, everything." Ethan set the shovel down, his rough hand resting on her shoulder. His tone was firm but calm. "I don't need their approval. I need my land, my work, and my choice, and I chose not to watch someone starve." Her eyes shimmered with tears. She wanted to argue, but the fire in his voice silenced her. For the first time, she believed he meant every word, yet even as he spoke, trouble was already near. On the far edge of the village, shadows slipped through the night. Strange shapes moved between barns and fences. The slavers had arrived, silent as wolves. Their eyes glowed red in the dark, their chains rattling softly. They had found her scent. The next morning, Ethan worked the fields as usual, but he noticed tracks in the dirt, heavy boot marks not belonging to any villager. His stomach turned, cold. He said nothing to the girl, but his grip on the shovel grew tighter. Later that day, Garen appeared at the farm again, alone this time. His face grim, his voice low. "They're here," he said. "The slavers, I saw them last night, near the hills. They're hunting, you brought this on us." Ethan's jaw locked, his eyes burned like steel. "Then I'll meet them," he said. "On my field, not yours," Garen sneered. "You'll die, farmer, and she'll be dragged back in chains. That's what you've chosen." He turned and left, leaving the dust to rise behind him. Ethan stood in the silence, his hand curling around the handle of his shovel. His heart beat heavy in his chest. The girl came running, her eyes wide. She had heard every word. Her voice shook. I told you they'd find me." Ethan turned, his face set hard. "Then let them come," he said. "This is my land, and I'll fight for it. You're not going back in chains. Not while I draw breath." The girl's lips parted, her glowing arms trembling. For a moment she saw not just a farmer but a wall of stone standing against the storm. But storms do not stop. They only grow stronger. The night was thick with silence, too heavy, too still. Ethan stood on the porch of his farmhouse, the lantern swinging in his hand. His eyes scanned the dark horizon. He felt it in his bones. The storm had come. The alien girl sat near the fire inside, hugging her knees. Her glowing arms flickered nervously, each pulse bright, then dim. She could not rest. Her ears caught every whisper of wind, every creak of wood. The memories of chains pulled at her chest. Suddenly the sound came, not loud, not near, but deep, a low hum that made the ground tremble. Ethan lifted his head, his jaw tightened. Over the hills, faint red lights cut through the dark. Ships, slaver ships. He stepped inside, his voice steady. "They're here." The girl's eyes widened, her breath caught. "No," she whispered. "They found me." Ethan grabbed his shovel, his old rifle, and set his feet firm. His voice was steel. "They'll take you over my dead body." The hum grew louder. Shadows moved at the edges of the field. Tall figures with glowing collars, chains in their hands, eyes burning red. They slipped through the crops, silent hunters. The slavers had come to claim what they thought was theirs. The first chain cracked through the night like lightning. It lashed across the porch, missing Ethan by inches. He fired his rifle. The shot echoing across the field. One slaver dropped, but more came. Their growls shook the air. The girl cried out, "You can't fight them, they'll kill you." Ethan's teeth clenched. His voice rose like thunder. "Then let them try." He swung his shovel like a blade, catching a slaver across the head. The creature fell into the dirt. Ethan turned and fired again. The porch lit with fire and sparks. The smell of smoke filled the air, but the slavers were many. They moved through the fields, breaking fences, trampling crops. Chains whistled through. The night wrapping around posts, snapping wood. They wanted the girl and nothing else mattered. Inside the farmhouse, she crouched low, her glowing arms bright with fear. Her body shook as she pressed against the wall. She could hear their voices, harsh and cruel. "Bring her out, the glowing thief. She belongs to us." Her tears fell, hot. She wanted to run, to hide, but Ethan's voice cut through the chaos. "Stay inside. Don't open the door." The battle raged. Ethan fought with fire and steel. He lit torches, throwing them into the fields. Flames roared high. Smoke rolled thick. The slavers snarled, their chains hissing as they struck. One broke through the porch, towering, eyes burning red. Its claws reached for the door. Ethan slammed into it with his shovel, the metal striking bone. The creature roared, but Ethan did not stop. He fought with the fury of a man who had nothing left to lose, but for every slaver he struck down, two more came. They were closing in, circling like wolves. The girl pressed her hands to her ears, her body rocking, memories of chains, and fire flooding back. She whispered through sobs, "Not again, please, not again." Then she saw him through the crack of the door, Ethan, bleeding, his face grim, standing tall against the storm, his shovel raised, his voice breaking the night. "You'll not take her." Her chest burned. Something inside her snapped. The glow on her arms flared, brighter than before, brighter than she thought possible. Her fear twisted into something else, into fire. She ran to the window, her small hands glowing like lightning. She pressed them against the glass. The light burst outward, blinding. The slavers staggered back, snarling, covering their eyes. Ethan looked at her, shock plain across his face. "What did you do?" Her voice shook but carried strength. "I don't know, but I won't hide anymore." The slavers regrouped. Their leader stepped forward, a massive figure with chains wrapped across his chest. His voice rolled low. "Give her human, or burn with her." Ethan spat blood, his eyes like iron. "You'll have to kill me first." The leader roared, raising his chain. The battle was not over, it was only beginning. The fields burned, the farmhouse shook, the night sky lit with fire and glowing arms, and in the middle of it all stood a farmer and a starving thief. No longer weak, no longer alone. The slavers had come to claim a prize, but what they found was resistance, and the galaxy would remember. The flames rose high over the fields, lighting the night with orange fire. The crops that Ethan had worked with, his own hands now burned, but his grip on the shovel only tightened. The slavers advanced through the smoke. their chains rattling, their red eyes fixed on the farmhouse. Inside, the alien girl pressed against the wall, her glowing arms flickering like stormlight. She had unleashed a burst of power she did not know she still had, and now her body shook with weakness. Her voice cracked. "Ethan, there are too many. You can't stop them all." Ethan spat blood into the dirt, his face grim. "I don't need to stop them all. I just need to show them that a man's land is not theirs to take." The slaver leader stepped forward, taller than the rest, a chain coiled around his arm like a serpent. His voice rolled like thunder. "You fight for nothing, farmer. She belongs to us. You will die for her, and no one will remember your name." Ethan's eyes burned with fire. "Maybe they won't remember me, but they'll remember this night. They'll remember a farmer stood against your chains." The leader roared and swung his chain. It snapped through the air with a sound like lightning. Ethan ducked and slammed his shovel into the slaver's leg. The creature stumbled, snarling. Ethan swung again, sparks flying as metal struck metal. The other slavers closed in, circling like wolves. Ethan fired his rifle, the blast dropping one, then another. But the weapon clicked empty, out of bullets, out of time. He dropped it, his hands closing around the shovel. The tool was scarred, the wood chipped, but in his grip it felt like a blade. He swung with everything. He had striking heads, breaking bones. The slavers fell, but more pressed forward. Inside the farmhouse, the girl's hands trembled. Her glowing arms pulsed weakly. She wanted to run, to hide. But then she saw Ethan, standing alone in the firelight, his figure black against the flames. She had seen slavers break men stronger than him, but he did not bend, he did not run. Something inside her burned. She crawled to the doorway, her weak voice rising. "You're not alone." Ethan glanced back, his eyes hard. "Stay inside." "But," she shook her head, tears shining in her glowing eyes. "They chained me, they starved me, but they never broke me. Tonight I fight too." The slaver leader roared and raised his chain again. Ethan braced, but before the strike fell, the girl's arms blazed with sudden light. Bright, fierce, alive. The glow spread across her body like fire across dry grass. The chains that reached for her hissed and snapped back. The slavers staggered, blinded by her glow. Ethan seized the moment. He slammed his shovel into the leader's chest. The creature crashed into the dirt, his roar echoing across the field. But the battle was not yet won. The slavers regrouped, rage burning in their eyes. They lunged as one, chains whipping, claws tearing. Ethan stood his ground, sweat and blood running down his face. He fought with fury, each swing of his shovel fueled by years of toil. His arms burned, his breath tore at his lungs, but he did not stop. Every strike was for his land, for his farm, and for the girl who had nothing left. The girl stumbled into the yard, her glowing arms casting light across the field. She raised her hands, the glow surging like lightning. A wave of force burst from her, throwing slavers back into the flames. Their roars filled the night, but they did not stop. The leader rose again, chains cracking, his voice thundered. "She is ours, farmer. Nothing you do will change that." Ethan's grip on the shovel tightened, his voice carried through the smoke. "You're wrong, she's under my roof, she works my fields, she's mine to protect, and I'll die before I hand her to you." The leader lunged, chains snapping like vipers. Ethan met him head on. His shovel struck the chain, sparks flying. The two locked in battle, fire roaring around them. The girl screamed, her glowing arms bursting bright one last time. The light cut through the smoke, through the fire, through the night. The slavers faltered, blinded and broken. The leader roared, but his chain slipped. Ethan swung with every ounce of strength left in him. The shovel crashed against the leader's skull. The giant staggered, then fell, the ground shaking beneath his weight. The field went silent. Only fire crackled, only smoke rose. The other slavers hissed, then retreated, dragging their wounded with them. Their red eyes vanished into the night. Ethan stood panting, his body shaking, his clothes torn and bloody. The shovel fell from his hand. The girl rushed to him, catching his arm. Her glowing arms wrapped around him like light. "You fought them," she whispered, her voice breaking. "For me, you fought them all." Ethan's chest rose and fell, his voice rough. "I told you, girl, they'd not take you while I stood." Her tears glowed in the firelight. She held him close for the first time, not as a thief, not as a slave, but as someone worth fighting for. The farm was broken, the fields burned, but the night had ended with something greater than survival. It had ended with defiance, and the galaxy would hear of it. The night after the battle was long. Smoke still rose from the fields, black scars across the land that had once been green. Ethan stood with his hands on the broken fence, his body aching, his face pale from loss of blood. His shovel lay nearby, dented and dark with ash. Behind him, the farmhouse door creaked open. The alien girl stepped out, her glowing arms wrapped in cloth. She moved slowly, her body weak from the light she had unleashed. Her silver-blue hair hung loose, catching the soft glow of the rising dawn. "You should rest," she said softly. Her voice was fragile but steady. "You fought harder than anyone should." Ethan shook his head, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "Rest comes later. Fields need mending, fences need fixing. We lost much tonight." She walked closer, her bare feet touching the cool dirt. Her eyes scanned the burned ground, the broken barn, the scattered tools. Everything smelled of smoke, but no chains rattled, no slaver voices echoed. The silence was heavy, but it was a silence of survival. "They'll come again," she whispered. "Slavers never stop. They don't forget what is theirs." Ethan turned to her, his jaw tight. "You're not theirs, not anymore. You're free now, as long as I breathe." Her glowing eyes shimmered with tears. Her hands tightened in the cloth. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to let go of the chains in her mind, but fear clung like a shadow. The villagers came at dawn, drawn by the smoke and fire. They stood at the edge of the field, whispering, their faces pale. They saw the scorched earth, the fallen bodies of slavers, the broken tools, and in the middle of it all, Ethan and the alien girl Garen stepped forward, his voice low but heavy. "You fought them. You stood alone against the chains. We thought you were a fool. But now we see." Another villager spoke, his voice unsteady. "The slavers feared you. They will think twice before coming here again." The whispers shifted, from suspicion to awe. The same mouths that had cursed now carried silence. Some even bowed their heads. Ethan said nothing. He did not fight for their approval. He fought for what was his. The girl lowered her gaze. Her voice trembled. "They'll hate me still. They'll say you burned your fields for a thief." But Ethan's voice cut strong. "Let them say what they will. They were not here. They did not bleed. They did not fight. They'll eat from fields I rebuild, and they'll owe it to you." Her breath caught. Her chest tightened. For so long she had been nothing, a shadow, a body to chain and sell. But now this man, this farmer, had spoken as if her life held weight. That evening, as the sun painted, the sky in fire and gold, the girl worked beside Ethan, her hands clumsy, her body weak. But she carried tools, mended fences, and planted seeds. Every motion felt strange. For once she was not working under the crack of a whip. For once she worked because she chose to. When the day ended, she sat by the fire inside the farmhouse. Ethan sat across from her, sharpening his shovel with slow strokes. The air was quiet, but not heavy. For the first time in years, her chest did not feel hollow. She looked at him, her voice small but clear. "Ethan, why do you fight so hard for me? You could have let them take me. You could have lived without this war." Ethan lifted his eyes, his face rough, his voice calm. "Because no one deserves chains, and because when I looked at you that night stealing bread, I saw not a thief. I saw someone worth saving." Her lips trembled, a tear slid down her cheek. She pressed her glowing hands against her chest. Then, "Let me stay. Let me work your fields. Let me mend your fences. Let me stand with you, not as a slave, not as a thief, but as someone who belongs here." Ethan nodded, his voice steady. "Then stay. Tomorrow we start again. The land will heal. So will we." Outside, the stars spread across the night, wide and endless. Somewhere beyond them, the slavers still waited. But here, on this small farm, hope had taken root. The alien girl lay on the blanket near the fire. Her glowing arms flickered soft, no longer broken, no longer dim. Ethan sat by the window watching the horizon. His shovel rested against the wall. The world was scarred, but it was alive. She was no longer a hungry thief. He was no longer just a farmer. Together they had stood against chains, and together they would build the promise of tomorrow.